About 8 years ago, I was on an airplane to Las Vegas and I was meditating the whole way there. I had my earbuds in, I was playing my music, and I was repeating the mantra, you got this, you can do this. This is what you worked for. This is what you worked for. And I was also doing some positive visualization. I was picturing myself walking into a room of people, sitting down and answering these questions I had been practicing over the last several days. And when I arrived in Las Vegas and walked into that room, I was feeling confident and calm, and I did a great job. And I was feeling like I'm going to get this job. And I flew home feeling happy, and sure enough, a couple days later, I received an offer, and that felt even better. I mean, I felt like I really, accomplished something, that I worked hard and achieved something, that I was becoming the person that I wanted to be, that I was working to be. And that really had a positive effect on my self-image. I felt top of the world. Sky was the limits. About 2 years ago, I went through a breakup that was really hard on me. It was a 7-year relationship, so a pretty long time to be together, and I really blamed myself for how and why it ended, and that had a really bad effect on my self-esteem, my even my concept of myself. I felt like I was a failure, somebody who couldn't make this work. I felt like no one was gonna love me ever again. I had all kinds of really wild and negative thoughts, trying to relive all the things that went wrong. And so, over that course of years, my perception of self changed greatly. And it changed because of things that were somewhat out of my control, whether I got a job or not, whether my partner decided they wanted to be with me, and somewhat in my control. I could do some things to affect my self-perception. I went to therapy. I started reading self-help books. I started taking my yoga practice and meditation more seriously. I reached out to friends for support. So there are things we can do to affect our sense of ourselves. And our sense of ourselves is inherently wrapped up in society and social interaction. And so it's not completely under our control, but we do have some say over it. And so I want to talk about that in this video. The idea of our sense of self, the textbook divides that up into 3 components. Self-concept is kind of your overall idea of who you are. Self-esteem is how you feel about that idea. Are you happy about who you are? Are you sad about who you are? And then self-efficacy deals with our belief in our ability to succeed or to accomplish certain life goals or life tasks, believing that we can do something. Efficacy is getting something done. These are all connected in our sense of ourselves. They're shaped both by our experiences, our culture, our family influences, the environment we grew up in, as well as our own personalities, our own traits, can shape these things. They're connected. If I believe that I can do something, I might actually succeed at doing it. If I succeed at doing it, I'll have a self-concept that I'm somebody who can do this thing, and that's going to boost my self-esteem. I'm going to feel good about myself. And by the same token, these things can start to undermine each other. If you have low self-esteem, it might affect your belief that you can do things, which might end up creating a situation where you don't do things, and your self-concept remains thinking that you're a person who can't do that. So the textbook talks about several things we can do to improve our self-perceptions. This will touch on some of them and go a little beyond that. And I like to think of these things as strategies or perception checks for improving our sense of self. And so we'll start with the first one, and I'll just kind of talk through all these, and I hope you find them to be helpful for you to think about. The first is that we should create and maintain supportive interpersonal relationships. We have to protect what's called our looking glass self. This was in the textbook. The looking glass self is the idea that we get a reflection of who we are through other people and how they respond to us. So if they respond in a harsher or negative way that feels like a punishment to us, we're going to start feeling bad about ourselves, and vice versa. If they're supportive, nurturing, compassionate people for us, then they're good to keep around us because they project a sense of us that is positive, and that's going to help us succeed in life and have a full, healthy, and happy life. So protect your looking glass self by surrounding yourself with people who are nurturing. Use social comparison, but only in your favor. The idea of social comparison theory was talked about in the textbook as well. This is the idea that we're always constantly comparing ourselves to others around us. So if we're going to be doing that kind of naturally, hopefully we can have some effect on how we do that, which is do it in our own favor. Don't compare yourself to people who aren't an appropriate reference group. If you're an athlete and you're comparing yourself to the pros, that might make you frustrated. You should compare yourself maybe to your teammates, and maybe a teammate who's in a similar situation in terms of their learning curve as you. So look for people to compare yourself to that are realistic and reasonable comparisons. And if they're not a reasonable comparison, rather than being discouraged by that, maybe use those people as role models. These are people who can be used as sources of inspiration or guidance for what's possible, where we could also go. So social comparison can be a really dangerous thing, but it can also be something that can be used in your favor. Be aware of self-fulfilling prophecies that you might have about yourself. Here's an example. I'm not fun enough. My partner, therefore, isn't attracted to me. So I have this belief about myself, I'm not fun, and I'm worried now that my partner is going to find me not attractive. Well, if I'm walking around kind of sulking and feeling like a person who's not fun enough, I might actually start behaving in a way that my partner's going to go, well, they're not being very fun. They're just sulking and moping around. And then eventually they might actually start to not be attracted to you anymore. And the very thing that you feared happening is now coming true because you've more or less made that happen. So don't accept these beliefs about yourself and then make them happen. Focus on your positive attributes. So we have in our minds self-talk. We have a dialogue going on in our minds. And so if we are, having that negative thinking that I was talking about with the self-fulfilling prophecies, then it's going to drag us down. So focus on your positive attributes. Try to focus your perception and your attention on things that you do that make you happy, things that you have that make you feel proud, things that you've accomplished that tell you're an accomplished person. Use positive self-talk, like I talked about in my story there at the beginning. Mantras are kind of like repeating something. I am a hardworking person, right? Repeat that in your head. Sorry, blanked out there for a second. I like to use a positive mantra that I derived from a wrestling camp when I was a little kid, which was the motto of the camp was Superman all the time. So I like to say Superman, Super Joe, Superman, Super Joe. It's silly, but it's also gets me kind of pumped up. I like to use visualizations if I'm worried about something that I'm going to be doing. I'd like to picture myself doing it ahead of time. I like to visualize myself kind of meditatively sitting and letting my worries go. Kind of, I picture a stream flowing out of my body below me into the ground, out of my feet into the ground. And then I try to pull from the environment strength or confidence, what I need to kind of pump myself up. So use visualizations, meditations. I know this stuff sounds perhaps a little cheesy to you, but I'm serious when I say that these things to me are about survival and surviving life and planning to live a long, happy life. So I hope you take it seriously, even though it is a little silly. A lot of times when we are thinking about ourselves and our interactions with other people, we are using distorted patterns of thinking, cognitive distortions. And I'd like to go over a few for you, and maybe they sound familiar. You might want to try to put these things into check. Do a perception check. Filtering is the tendency in a situation or an interaction to focus in on one negative thing. Or maybe if you're thinking about yourself, it's to focus in on the one thing you really don't like about yourself. There's all these other things you could be focusing on. Don't filter out all the good stuff and focus only on the negative. Polarized thinking. This is thinking in terms of black and white. I'm either perfect or I'm a failure, right? That kind of thinking, it just isn't really true to reality, and it's distorted and can lead you to errors in your perception of self. Overgeneralization is taking one little setback or one little interaction and using that to make a general conclusion about yourself. So it's similar to some of these other distortions. Catastrophizing. Oh, what if I fail? What if everybody hates me? This is the tendency to kind of blow things way out of proportion, to assume the worst things are going to happen. That's not likely going to happen. Personalization is interesting. People do personalization when they assume that what others doing or saying or how they're acting or what mood they're in is somehow about us. People are caught up and wrapped up in their own worlds, right? Think about yourself. There's a lot going on already within your own mind, let alone to be totally attuned to what everybody else is doing. So don't assume that what everybody's doing and saying is about you. This is also happening when we compare ourselves to others constantly, right? What other people are doing in their lives doesn't really relate or affect to you. There's no reason you should compare someone else to you. Why didn't I win? You see that somebody else won a competition and you compare that to you. Well, just celebrate what they did. What they did does not diminish who you are. There's not a need to compare yourself to everybody. Why are you so mad? Was it something I did? Okay, kind of always assuming that everything negative happening is somehow because of you. It's likely not true. Don't over personalize things. Emotional reasoning is the last one I'm going to go over, I believe. I'll scroll down and check here. Emotional reasoning is reasoning with how you're feeling and taking what you're feeling to be the absolute truth, right? I feel that I'm boring, so therefore I must be boring. How you're feeling changes and can be changed through a lot of different ways. So it's not at all, it's not necessarily going to reveal the truth, and quite often it won't. I think about how I just finished eating a pizza. Oh, I feel so gross, and oh, I feel bad about myself. I just finished a workout. Oh, I feel so great, right? Your feelings can really alter your sense of self and your reality. So, that's the last one I wanted to show you. So, just to quickly review, maintain good relationships, beware of your self-fulfilling prophecies, focus on the positive and use techniques to bring that positive to the forefront of your mind, and watch out for these distorted patterns of thinking. Life is long. One day you'll be on an airplane feeling your greatest. The next day you might be at one of the lowest points of your life as you're moving out of your apartment. These things happen in life and in our social interactions, and it's just part of what it means to be a human being. And those of us who I think want to live a long, happy life are going to be actively trying to improve our self-perceptions so that we can get through these difficult times and also really enjoy the good times.